I'm very excited to be here with Niclas Sandström today to talk about how the US election has impacted the crypto space. Welcome, Niclas.
Thanks.
How are you feeling?
It's good. It's good.
And today, Bitcoin just reached $100,000. And so that's really manifesting the shift that we have seen in the political sphere. So immediately, or if you can start with, what does Hilbert do, and what's the background here?
Yeah, so Hilbert is a Nasdaq-listed company. It's listed on Nasdaq First North here in Stockholm. We do mainly two things. We're a crypto company, but the biggest leg is asset management. Mm-hmm. So we run a number of hedge funds, catering to institutional investors. The second thing we do is crypto analytics, data and analytics, predominantly for retail, and we're doing that through a subsidiary called coin360.com.
Very interesting, very interesting. So I can imagine the political shift that we are seeing has benefited you in multiple ways, both in volatility and in a great uptick in the like inflows in the crypto sphere. How has it affected you, and what has happened really?
I think all this optimism, partly because of the Trump win, but the time was also ripe, I think, for crypto market to go higher. But Trump has sort of accelerated it. And I think that's because of the policies they communicated, and I'm happy to talk about how we view that. It's much more accepted. You have all the big players involved, or not all the big players, but many of the biggest, such as BlackRock, etc., doing serious stuff with crypto right now.
Yeah, so we're really talking about the adaptation then of the crypto, and that the policies is a little bit more positive, really, towards it. Yeah. And how do you view, or Hilbert, or you personally view the adaptation process of cryptocurrencies going forward?
I think it will accelerate from here because you have important private operators such as BlackRock and others working, but also the political, and there US play a big role. I mean, we have a regulatory, let's say, regime in Europe. It's called MiCA. But US will lead this to a great extent now, finally. I think we will have a decent framework coming into place. And that's going to change everything. So more pension funds, more retail, more of everything, basically, investing in crypto.
And that relates really to your counterparts or your customers then? Yes. And so who are typically your customers or investors?
It's typically institutions, because we run hedge funds. Hedge funds are normally regulated. And when they're regulated, you have a minimum investment size, which is quite big. Mm-hmm. Overall, more or less globally, it's around $100,000, the smallest investment amount. And that's legislation that's there to protect. So you have to be an accredited investor. You have to be sophisticated enough that you understand the risk that you're taking. And that's where those limits are coming from.
Yeah. And have you experienced some great inflows in terms of this shift in the world view of cryptos?
Yeah, I mean, it's more requests now. I mean, Hilbert as a whole have basically 10x'd the assets under management since last year. There are certain types of products that's crystallized as being popular. For example, yield on top of Bitcoin. So basically increasing the pile of Bitcoin that you have. That's very interesting for a lot of institutions who hold a lot of Bitcoin to increase that pile of Bitcoins. That's a big product that's taken off this year, I would say.
And I can envision that this product in particular would be popular for like pensions funds and governments for like holding. I see some talks in the US to have like to make a what's called like security deposit of also to hold Bitcoin. Yes. And instead of having dead capital in crypto, if you can achieve some yield on it, and I can envision that It's very
Exactly.
popular.
Yes. I mean, there are a lot of foundations, there are banks, such as Supper Bank, but institutions that are natural holders of large amounts of crypto, it's interesting for them. As you say, you don't have a lazy balance sheet. You have you want to have a balance sheet that's actually is there, so it would leave money on the table. You might as well earn some yield on it.
Yeah. And how does that work really? How do you generate that yield? Where is it coming from?
It's different. There are, you can do it in a robust way, or you can do it in a less robust way. So there's been talk about yields in crypto for a long time, where people stake crypto. This is all crypto, right? So it's crypto native. There are risks with that, but it's been working fairly well from time to time. You have the funding rate in crypto, which has typically been like 10% per annum, and people have used that. But that's crypto native. What's happening now, the big shift we see is that you mix traditional assets and crypto to generate a more robust yield. So for example, you can mix credit and crypto, meaning that you might have Bitcoin denominated loans to high-grade counterparties, and they pay you a yield in Bitcoin to borrow your Bitcoin. And that yield is very robust because it's more related to credit, right? It's a loan, it's a standard loan. And that's a way, for example, a robust way of earning a yield on top of Bitcoin.
Yeah. Can this also be combined with, I don't know, like to take it out from the options market or stuff like that? Or is it more directly in the, like, borrowing to a counterpart?
No, you can take it out from options markets. There's always risks, right? If you do it in credit, you have credit risk. Option markets, there are other type. You always have some kind of counterparty risk, but you can, and there are various ways, and there are people who use derivatives to extract some yield on top of the underlying, which is typically Bitcoin or Ethereum.
And for Hilbert, how or do you do a combination, or what's the strategies used?
So we run 4 funds right now. 3 of them are sort of crypto only, whereas the biggest fund, which we are doing in cooperation with Supper Bank, that is a mixture, and that's hence the name. So it's like the Xapo Byzantine Bitcoin Credit Fund, which sort of signals the mix between traditional assets as credit, loans, and Bitcoin, basically. So, but we expect more of these fund vehicles, and we listen to what investors want. But this is something we think will grow greatly.
Yeah. And there, back to the growth, where could we see it coming from? Like I said, I've heard some talk about this strategic reserve of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But maybe there are other holders. And what about other cryptos? So what's going on in the market really for the big holders and the big?
It's still finding its form. I think Bitcoin has established itself as, I think, digital gold. Even Powell said it's digital gold. More and more being treated like that. But the question is more open for other cryptos. There's no doubt that these smart contract platforms like Ethereum, like Solana, etc., there will be some winners, but it's not clear yet, right? You have some good contenders. So it's still finding its form, and most of crypto is going to be worthless, but there's going to be some really good use cases, some really good cryptocurrencies, but it's still up for grabs. Who knows in 5 years, especially with AI in combination with smart contract platforms, who will be the winner? I think Bitcoin will be there for sure. But then, Ethereum is big now, but will it be big in 5 years' time and so on? We will see.
Right. And what are the big opportunities that arise now from Trump winning the election?
Yeah, so maybe I can make a small digression how we see it, how it all started. So back when we started, 2017, 2018, 2 countries dominated, let's say, crypto innovation. It was US and China. So if you looked at the coins then and where the innovation was actually happening, it was US and China. US had the extra dimension, which was really important for us, that they also had good service providers, right? So when we were going and starting up funds, you needed, custodians, you needed banking accounts, you needed like brokers. Back then, it was much better than it is now in the US, and there's a reason for that. So they had what we felt, a lot of us come from traditional finance. It worked exactly the same way. They were really high-class brokerages or banks. The functionality back then was still much better than what you see on the European side, on the banking side, for crypto. But then Gary Gensler really, and many with him, really wanted to stop crypto. And that really put a damper of a lot and really destroyed a lot of service providers in the US. Some funds moved abroad. There was some activity, but no. So, and that has not been repaired as of yet. So that was the situation. But then, US is still, I think, in many respects, a leader. Some of the biggest crypto companies are still there, but it's been very difficult, especially with banking. So I will just give a few examples. So people have heard maybe names like Silvergate, Signature Bank, and so on. It was a superb service, direct connectivity. So if you were like trading in an institutional way, you could easily move crypto directly from the bank to the exchange back again. So all that was sort of torn down for political reasons. Is my view on that, for political reasons. So that's where it started. And then crypto, even though all this resistance became more popular, a big following, and Trump was, Republicans in general, I would say, were quite early on supporting crypto. What has been the problem is that there hasn't been a clear rule book in the US. For example, two big questions like what is a security and what is not a security? It's never been answered. How should crypto be regulated? There are two bodies, SEC, securities, and then CFTC in the US, derivatives. And it wasn't clear, and they never gave any guideline. A lot of people think it was regulation by enforcement or regulation by litigation. Hence, a lot of the innovation was, paralyzed in the US because it was too big risk to take. You might be litigated against, and many companies were indeed. But that's what Trump has gone out and said now, that there's going to be a good regulatory framework in the US. He will support crypto strongly. That framework will be written by people who are knowledgeable about crypto. And I think that's going to be the case. He was participating in crypto conferences. He accepted funding for his campaign in crypto. But if you look more seriously, what's happening is that a lot of high-profile Republicans always been pro-crypto. Ted Cruz, for example. He runs some crypto rigs even, but he sees Texas as, okay, it's about freedom. It should be a hub for innovation. Trump wants US to come back and be the leader in crypto innovation. There are others like Patrick McHenry, Republican. You have Cynthia Loomis, this Bitcoin Act that's been proposed and Trump really wants to implement. What you were saying in the beginning, that US government should hold a big reserve in crypto, should even sell some of the gold reserves, invest in crypto, and so on. So there's much going on, and the new expected SEC head, Paul Atkins, he has been a long-standing crypto proponent, says he will make a comprehensive framework, define what is a security, what is not a security, and have as little, decent but not too much regulation. So you can have, just like in traditional finance, a working industry that sort of promotes innovation. So I think that will happen.
Very interesting. So we have multiple levels here. Either one point is to get back the level of service or the implementation that we're on the institutional side.
Yeah.
To build that back, or maybe give the option for them to build it back. And the other one is on the whole political level that we're seeing.
Yes.
It's a very interesting point. I've heard things that many people were debanked and stuff that were working in the crypto space, and I can see that the desks were torn down or less popular. The brokers went elsewhere. I can see that happening. But it's very interesting that you all also felt it and seen it yourself, and that we're behind really.
Absolutely, it was tough a period for many, not only us. Bank after bank was shut down for political reasons and brokerages and so on. So, but that will change now, I think. So we're very hopeful, and we think obviously it was good that Trump won the election.
Yeah, needless to say on this one.